Welcome to Unlock Your Child's Full Potential. I'm Billy, mom of three, positive parenting coach, and your guide to raising kids with connection, not control. Here we talk about parenting without punishments and constant power struggles, building deep bonds, and creating a home where kids want to listen, so you can enjoy family life to the fullest. Have you ever looked at your child staring at a screen and wondered, is this really okay? You're not alone. Screen time has become such a normal part of our kids' lives, but deep down, many of us feel uneasy about it. We worry about their brains, their moods, their social lives, and whether we're doing enough to protect them. My guest today is Mary Catherine Lisinski, a certified life coach who specializes in helping families break free from digital overuse and addiction. In our conversation, we talk about the science behind screen time, how it impacts kids' brain development, and the surprising links between excessive screen use and rising mental health challenges in children. Mary Catherine shares eye-opening insights, like how video games and social media hijack the brain's dopamine system, and why symptoms like irritability, withdrawal, and trouble focusing might be signs of something deeper. We also talk about what you can actually do, from setting boundaries around tech to building screen-free routines that feel good for the whole family. Whether you have a toddler or a tween, this episode is here to help you feel more confident and clear about how to support your child's digital health. Welcome to the show, Mary Catherine.
Thank you, Billy. It's such a great thing to be here.
I'm really excited about our topic today, digital health. And as parents, this is one of those things we have to think about, even from the toddler years, in my opinion. Screen struggles seem to be a part of everyday life now, right?
Right. It keeps getting younger and younger, the age of screens. And so there are a lot of negative things that we need to be aware of, especially in regards to children, but even our own use as well. It can really just suck up our time, but it has also just addictive properties that keep us stuck in there. And so I enjoy spreading the word and educating people about the addictive properties of screens and how we just need to be very careful about usage.
Yeah, let's start with the basics. I think most of us know that too much screen time isn't good. But what does the research actually say? How much is too much, especially for young children? And what are some of the scientifically proven risks?
Well, I'll tell you, various large organizations have come out with recommendations, such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, and you hear it in their journal, the Journal of American Medical Association. But I will say this, when I talk to other individual practitioners, counselors, and coaches, we think that those organizations' recommendations are actually too lenient. So, for example, one that I would agree with is like no screen time before the age of 2. I believe that comes from the American Academy of Pediatrics. But just say infants, they don't need that. And
Right.
it's very tempting to use it as a babysitter. I think that then as you go up a little bit older, they say like 1 hour a day between, 2 and 10 years old, something like that. But they talk about it being supervised as well for you to know what is going on. And then I think up to age 15, it's about 2 hours a day. But again, when I talk to individual practitioners, they're like, we don't agree with that. And so I just say the least amount as possible, the better. And really, with social media, that alone, even a little bit of time has lots of risks for teenagers and kids, what they get connected with through social media. And even now, we talk about social media the most, but even now, video games that you can interact with strangers online through the internet, through the video game. Some parents aren't realizing that their child is doing that, and that can be very dangerous.
And is exactly the interactive nature of it all the one that's so addictive?
That is part of it. It's easy to interact with people over a screen. It seems very low risk in certain ways, but in actuality, it's very high risk when it's a stranger. But the addictive properties, I would say, especially concerning video games, but even social media as well, is that it causes our dopamine to spike, which dopamine is the feel-good hormone, the feel-good chemical in your brain that spikes. It's the same one that spikes when someone is taking an illegal drug. Okay, so it has those same addictive properties and pathways in the brain. And what happens is, especially with video games, is you start playing a video game and you get that spike of dopamine, but then it actually plateaus and it will stay there. Like as long as you keep playing that game, that dopamine will be flowing. Whereas when you take a drug, you get that initial spike and then it comes down, and then you feel the need to take the drug again, another hit or whatever. And so having that heightened level of dopamine for hours on end is not the way we're designed to be, and it can then lead to dopamine depletion, which then turns into, children having meltdowns, children having low motivation because we need a little bit of dopamine. It's good for us. It's a natural occurring hormone in our body that we're supposed to be able to feel sometimes and have. But when it spikes up super high, whether it's from a video game or social media or an illegal drug, that's the unhealthy part.
And a lot of boys these days are so much into video games, and it's part of their social life. I have a 9-year-old, and her classmates have a meeting every night for an hour. They are on a call and they're playing a video game together, and that's part of their social circle. And if you're not part of it, you're kind of excluded and might feel bad. And these are 9-year-olds. I can't imagine for the teens that might be even higher need to belong.
Right. Yes, it's very much a part of their culture now. And so parents have to be very intentional. If they're going to say, we're going to back away from so much screen time, you need to try your best to have a circle of friends where the other parents also say, hey, you know what? We're going to get together with our kids in person at the park, or we're going to have a party at our house and things like that. That takes more effort, yes, but it is what those of us who are older, it's what we grew up with. So it's actually not that foreign. It's just foreign to this new generation. They're used to being able to have instant access to any friend, whether it's texting or video chat or these video calls. And so it takes a lot of intentionality for parents to say, you know what, we have to provide an alternative way for our kids to be with their friends in a healthier way, in a healthier environment.
You're right. You can find the right people that do the same thing as you. I wonder sometimes, are we able to understand the reality our kids live in right now? You say it wasn't that way for us, but life changes. Like the world is digital, whether we like it or not. So our kids are going to be living in this kind of environment. Are we right to limit them and trying to reverse the situation?
I believe that we are wise to do that because also when you have very young children, their brains are still developing. The human brain is not fully developed until age 26. And so when you think about that, that means that our environment, what we expose our minds to and our brains to, really affects actually how it grows. So I'll show you this. I have this little drawing here. This is a cross section of the brain. And this middle part here is your limbic system. This is where your emotions are housed. Anger, fear, anxiety, all of those kinds of things. And then this part of your brain, which is right behind your forehead, is your prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain that is responsible for decision making, problem solving, communication, self-control, those types of skills, okay? And so this is the part of the brain that is not fully developed until age 26. It's slowly coming along until
Yeah.
that age. So what happens is when we spend too much time here, and I'll talk about that especially with video games, but when we spend too much time with this part of our mind lit up and active, so to speak, it is not growing the neurons, the brain cell connections between these two parts so that children can develop these skills. And so occupational therapists in schools, they're saying we are seeing or we are having kids referred to us with problems that we used to not see. They're having trouble learning to read and write, which is also the same thing. This part of your brain that has to do with language. Very young children, when they are stuck in front of a screen too much and they're not having those face-to-face conversations, the play that they need, they're having developmental delays. And so when we actually listen to the practitioners, they are very alarmed. There was a study, or a survey rather, that was published in Politico magazine in 2024, last year. They surveyed 1,400 mental health professionals like myself. And they said, what do you think is the number one cause for this spike in mental illness that we're seeing in young kids now? There's a big spike in depression and anxiety, and younger people are really having a hard time. So anyway, in this survey, the number one cause listed by far was social media. So these are the practitioners who are seeing these troubled kids who are really having a hard time. And they're saying we've identified social media as the number one cause. So it's like, whoa, we really need to get this information out there so that parents know, hey, we need to step up and help protect our kids from these things that damage them physically, their brain development, emotionally, with their, depression, anxiety. We saw a huge, I think it was between 2007 and 2018, for 10 to 14-year-olds, the number of suicides tripled.
Oh, wow.
And
10 to 14.
yeah, that is so young and just very heartbreaking for a life to end at that age due to suicide. And, the social media age started in 2007. That's when
Mhm.
Facebook really came on board and all of these things. And we as adults have enough of a hard time being addicted to scrolling and all of these things. And we have grown men hooked on video games because they have all of these addictive properties. And young brains are especially vulnerable. The cyberbullying, I'm sure you're aware of, this just, they can't get away from it. And so it's bad news out there.
Yeah, yeah. I think even if we introduce the smartphone and screens, still social media should come a lot later. You can introduce the smartphone without Instagram, Snapchat, and all these platforms.
Right. There are now a few different companies that make phones that are specifically designed for teenagers. So they have the screen and all of that, but they do not have the hardware, the capacity for all of the social media and things like that. And so those are coming on board. There's a few different companies that now cater to that. And so, yes, having your teenager have a phone for safety purposes, to be able to talk and text, but just not have unlimited access to the internet, which can really be tough for them.
Yeah, it can, for sure. And what are some symptoms that if we see, we might say, okay, my child has a digital addiction?
So, if they are having trouble sleeping at night, so many kids have their screens in their bedroom, which is another fight. Drawing from other people to be by themselves on their screen. Anger when you try to get them to get off their device. Lower grades due to a lack of ability to focus. A lot of people don't realize that, especially video gaming, actually can create ADHD symptoms. And so watching their grades, things like that, what is their normal? Poorer communication skills, less eye contact. They're not as happy as they used to be. They lack motivation. Just that, unfortunately, I would call it the zombie face. That is not normal. Kids are supposed to be happy and full of life, not 24/7, but like that should be the norm and not this just blank. It's really depression. It looks
Mhm.
blank and flat, but it's really depression on the inside. And I see way too many teenagers with that, and that's a really bad sign as well. But just, withdrawal, anger, things like that, not enjoying the things that they used to enjoy. That's also a big sign that if they're getting all of this dopamine pleasure and all of that from their scrolling smartphones and their video games, the other things that they used to enjoy don't provide that high of a dopamine spike. And so it's not just that they've necessarily grown out of those activities. Some they do grow out, but it can very well be that they just don't feel the same amount of excitement as they used to because they're now used to that big dopamine high.
I can
So,
imagine that being a parent of a teenager, you might be confused that it's just a normal behavior of a teenager. The hormones are all messy and might not be so easy to spot that it's a digital addiction, actually.
right, I could see that with moods and things. I would just say if it continues to be a continuous mood, then it's
Hmm.
not fluctuating hormones. And I think we need to, again, say that just this zombie face is not normal. Withdrawing from others is not normal. Certainly, drop in grades is not normal. School is tough, but if you see a significant difference there, if they start having trouble focusing, that's for sure, and not having pleasure in things that they used to enjoy.
And is it possible to turn this around?
It is. It is. That's where it takes a lot of effort. And so you do need to greatly reduce screen time. And I've come across so many parents who they've tried and unfortunately failed. And that's where I think we need to realize this is an addiction. And if you look at AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, they are very big on you need a sponsor, you need a team, you need other people walking alongside you. Their thing is you can't do it by yourself. And so I think
Mhm.
the same thing is true with this, that not only Do you need to have like the whole family headed in that direction? Hopefully, you can have friends head in that direction. And I, as a coach, can provide that specific support for a little while along the way so that people don't feel alone or they don't fail a second time because it is very hard. And that shows when people have tried and failed to reduce screen time, that really shows you, hey, this is not just a behavior, this has addictive properties. We don't even have to call it an addiction if we don't want to. We can just call it overuse, right? But whenever we try to stop something and we have a hard time, that means we're a little bit too attached to it. So it is, and we've seen teenagers kind of, turn around and those moods lift and change. So it is possible.
So take their phones away and limit our screen time together. Is that what needs to be done?
In the short term, something like that is appropriate. Certainly, we as adults, as parents, you need to model good screen time usage and not be on our screens when our kid comes up to us to interact, things like that. And I know it's hard, but we have to be the parents, we have to be the adults. And so I think sometimes it does say, okay, we're going to have a short period of time where we just go off screens, and then we'll add back in slowly to see what's appropriate for you at this age. Assuming you have children at different ages, there would be different things appropriate to each age. But I think it takes kind of a detox, honestly, just like you have drug addicts go into a detox facility, and there actually are specific facilities for digital addiction as well. They're all over Asia, and there's a few here in the US. But anyway, you go through this detox. And then you come home, but you still have to make those lifestyle changes. Unfortunately, we know of people who are addicted to some sort of substance and they go through the 30-day detox and they're detoxed. But then if they go back to their same lifestyle, they relapse. And this is kind of the same way you really have to change your lifestyle in order to say, hey, we're going to interact with screens really differently so that we can be better. And I think that a way to frame it positively is to teach children and teenagers about brain health, because I would hope that we can instill a love of learning in our kids and for them to want to have sharp brains, to be smart, to be able to get ahead in whatever they love about life, whatever they end up doing with their lives. So if we can instill that and say, hey, let's give your brain the best chance to be the best brain that it can be. And let's learn brain science. Let's learn all about emotional intelligence and these executive functioning skills that are going to just put you way up there. I think that's a positive way to frame it instead of focusing so much on, oh, we're going to take away all your fun. That's not the way to do it.
Yeah, and maybe introduce new activities that fill the time that was used for screens. Go outside, go hiking, something like that.
Right. Yes. Go outside, play board games, play card games, do things as a family, get together with friends. Again, it takes effort, but what better thing than to invest in your children, right? To help them be happy and successful. So work, yes, but reward, huge.
If you want to be proactive, most listeners here are parents of younger kids, like 5 to 12. What are some realistic rules or habits we can start early on to protect our kids, not to get addicted or not to overuse?
Right, yeah. So I would say if your child does not have a phone yet, hold off on the phone as long as possible, but then first give them a dumb phone that does not connect to the internet. And that's going to be a lot safer as far as phones. Also, just not having a screen in their bedroom of any type, phone, iPod, iPad, television, just no screens in the bedroom. The bedroom is for sleeping and for studying. I know some kids need to have the computer to study for school, but just no screens in the bedroom. That's a good rule. Another one is to say no screens at the table, no phones at the table. Another one would be to just limit that time. And so you have X number of minutes per day. Some parents will do, you can only have screen time on the weekend, but not during the weekdays. You can do it like that. You can do it where we'll watch a movie all together as a family. We're not going to be all on our separate screens. Have a family movie night. It can be fun. So those would be some things.
Yeah. Right now in my family, we all have separate screens because everyone likes a different show. So
Right.
we all go in different rooms to watch our
Mhm.
shows. But I would imagine a family show would be much better alternative.
It can be a challenge depending on the age range of your children, but I think you can.
I think the biggest challenge is also for parents. Like if we say no phones allowed after 8 p.m., for example, if we have older kids, the challenge is for us to do the same and be supportive because we're so used to our free time to be enjoyed by watching something on a screen.
Yes, those addictive properties pull us as adults just as hard, but we have to remember, okay, I can develop the self-control and the self-discipline. I can do it if I really stick to it or if I have a friend helping to keep me accountable. But my young child doesn't have that self-control. So that's why the young child needs so much more parental oversight because they don't have that brain development yet. But yes, saying, okay, and tell your friends, hey, after 8 p.m., I don't answer the phone. Or you can put it on do not disturb mode, something like that, where only a couple of people's calls come through for safety purposes. A lot of families will have like a box or a specific place in the house, and everybody puts their phone or their iPad in that box at night, docking stations. And so everybody can see everybody's just put away. And now we're going to either sit outside or read together, do some sort of family project together, and do that instead.
Yeah, it sparks a lot of creativity. Like, how do we spend the time if we're
Yeah.
not on screens?
Yes.
If there's one thing you'd want parents listening to walk away with today, something they can do or think starting right now, what would that be?
I would just say, I think initially learning some of these sad statistics is kind of a downer, but I want to leave parents with just the hope that they can take control of their screen time in their own life and for their kids, helping their kids, and just seeing it in a positive light of their kids' personal development and their brain growth, and try to find at least one friend to do it with and saying, I want to give my kids some of what I had when I was little and didn't have screens when I was 10 years old. A little bit of that, and hopefully going back to your own childhood is what I want to encourage and just instill hope in people. And if that's what I want to do.
Yeah, and maybe find a community of other parents who are doing that because that would be an easier way to find a friend for your child, just looking for those parents. And they're out there. We sometimes think we're alone in this and we're the only ones struggling with something, but there are all kind of communities out there. We have to look for them.
There are, if even if you're the first one to speak up, others will say, yes, me too. We want to join you. So you may be the first to speak up, but you will not be alone.
The sad thing is, for example, in the school where my kids are, most of them already have iPhones, like at 9 and younger. And I think parents know that's not the best option, but it's the easier one. The kids ask all the time, and it's just easier to give them the phone.
It is very difficult. I acknowledge that, but just if you can even find one other friend who might already have an iPhone too, but just say, hey, let's do this together. But I realize it's very difficult. But yes, if you have a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, stick to putting off that phone as long as possible and find other parents who are willing to do the same.
Thank you so much, Mary Catherine. This has been
Thank you.
eye-opening.
Thank you for having me on, Billy. It's been great.
Before we go, can you tell people where they can find you and how they can work with you if they want more support?
Yes, sure. So I can work with people all across the US. My phone number is 501-290-7132. Or you can go to my website, which is lifewalkcoaching.com. So it's lifewalk is WALK, coaching.com, and find more information about me there as well. And I would love to help support people.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this conversation gave you some clarity and maybe a little encouragement as you think about your own family's screen time habits. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love it if you took a moment to rate and review the podcast. It really helps other parents find the show and join us in these important conversations. And if you're not already subscribed, you go ahead and hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. Talk to you soon.